in last month, it came up in my memories 10 years it's been 10 years that I've been doing ICT since I took it over. So
Well,
that's like,
wow.
yeah, it's
That's
crazy,
great.
right?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, well, there's been quite
Yes.
a transformation in the curriculum and the participation and the method of ministry and dealing with people. So, and then the thing about that is, we had our first class in September of, I had my first class, certificate course class in September of 2014, and in January I was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. So that was, yeah, quite a journey. That year, I I had scheduled a class that somebody else was doing in January, and I was not able to participate in that session. It was on anger management, and the lady Peggy that used to run ICT, she
Yes.
kind of supervised the class for me, and I had all that year I did a blog post of my progress and taking parallels of my physical healing and progress and treatment and stuff, and applying it to spiritually as well, giving some, it was quite a testimony on our web blog, Fundación Efraín, on WordPress. So, that was very encouraging to a lot of people, because the cancer that I had has 86% recurrence rate. So it's kind of, wow, yeah. So that in itself is a testimony. And then in 2016, I did a class on praying for people for healings that don't believe, and how to walk through that. What you need to do. So my testimony there is a testimony. Of course, it's a miracle, because cancer doesn't just disappear, but it's a healing, because it was a progressive work that God did. And I felt, just a testimony, I wasn't planning on sharing this, but in my heart, when I was first diagnosed, obviously, you know, you can choose to fight, or you could choose to succumb, and instead of just relying solely on the medicine, I I received, I felt a plan from God with threefold cord, right? God, the medicine, and the word of God. So I basically was standing on the word of God, that I would walk through the fire and I would not be burned, and it would not kindle upon me. And so one day I was just praying, because they were scheduling a surgery, and I was like, I felt like God was saying I didn't need to have the surgery. And I was supposed to have it in April, but they had to postpone it for some reason or other. And I had I don't know if it was an MRI or a CAT scan right before, and it still showed tumors in my abdomen. And so I said, okay, God, I don't get this. What is this? And so some people can act on presumption or whatever. And I just felt like I should, even though I felt he had spoken to my heart that I didn't need to have the surgery, I felt I went ahead and had the hysterectomy. And I was reading the blog post that I did after, and I had not too long ago, and I saw on there that when the doctor came out to talk to my family, they said there was nothing there. So even though they removed the organs, there was nothing there, even though a month earlier, there was still evidence of the cancer. And so that's a testimony, right? It wasn't because they did anything. Even though I did have chemo,
Right.
it was it was definitely God, and it was definitely
Uh-huh.
a testimony. He healed me, and by me staying on His word, and you know, um, just clinging to him and joining myself with him. So
Amen.
that's what happened to me, and then so I continued with different things in the ministry and with ICT.
I would. It's Mary Bonner. And I wanted to just say I'm very grateful that we had our annual aortic aneurysm walk last Saturday. And we had a nice turnout. And we're getting the awareness out. Small numbers, but a mighty word from our Lord and Savior.
I wanted to add too, I'm involved with IYM, Incarcerated Youth Ministry, and we've been able to really minister to these young men, and God's opened a door for another facility, which includes young women as well, and pretty soon we'll be able to go to, well, some people are already going to that just once every 2 weeks. And then they're going to open it up so that all the chaplains can go and minister to both young men and women. But since I've been doing it, I guess they're celebrating 29 years of ministry. And this facility that's opening up to us, they've been praying for this for 15 years. And God has opened that door graciously. But the thing that just has blessed me so much is that we've been able to lead several young men and women to the Lord. And you can see the transformation in them. They are a light in the group of boys, young men that they're in their rooms or pods, whatever and it's just really been eye-opening for me what a need it is for that whole prison system ministry. It's
eye-opening.
Yeah, it really is. And every time I walk out of that facility, I am so grateful that God opened that door so that I can, just pour some love and hope into these young men. Some of them, I've had 12-year-old boys.
Oh, wow.
And I've had 18-year-olds. So it's like you just don't realize. And then if you have kids of your own and you see that could have been them, I just it's really been a heart-changing thing for me. So I just wanted to share that good, positive things are happening in that ministry.
Praise God. So this is something that can touch all of our lives, because we want to be able to get stuff done, and it's not just for us, but it can help other people that can't get started. I think when we're dealing with people, a lot of times they just can't get the initiative to go do something, or they find themselves floundering around or running in circles or unproductive. And so it's we can all use tips on not wasting time. There's a scripture that talks about redeeming the time, for the days are evil, right? And we are going to be accountable for what we say and do. And so we need to be faithful stewards of our time as well as our resources, right? On the radio, when I was starting to right before I had determined this would be a good topic, I heard an expert quoted as saying, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. Right? Because if there's priorities, it's saying, well, what is it that's important? That we have a tendency to have too many irons in the fire. So it seems that we seem to think that the more we have to do, the more pleasing we are in society, they're always wanting you to be productive. They're glorifying the person that does 50 things and the child that it has 30 is in 30 activities, and you're always running around. But we need to choose what God wants us to be involved in and put that as our focus and other things to the side. Right? So today we're going to talk about defining procrastination, causes of procrastination, types of procrastination, types of procrastinators, reducing procrastination, and increasing motivation. And the last two kind of mesh a little bit. So you can kind of cross categories a little bit in those tips that we'll get at the end of the class, or the last part of the class. All right, so what is procrastination? Procrastination is a deliberate choice to postpone or delay something, even though it may lead to negative outcomes. As students, we've had assignments that we've postponed starting, or tests that we've postponed studying for. And it's not just that something happened and we don't get to it. It's that we decide, I'm going to go to the baseball game instead of studying for my test. Or I'm going to watch TV instead of dusting. Okay? So even self-disciplined people do other things instead of working on important tasks. And this occurs in academic settings, jobs, going to bed, administrative settings, and delayed decision making. And it's not usually considered a serious problem until it becomes a chronic behavior, but it can have major impacts. 20% of adults procrastinate chronically. 75% of college students consider themselves procrastinators. 50.7% procrastinate on the internet. And you always see people scrolling and doing different things on the internet. And it helps to fill in time when you're in a waiting room, right? But we do things on just surfing the internet instead of doing something that we need to do. And 40% of the people who procrastinate do it by spending time online. Why do we procrastinate? Okay, it is a false impression or false belief that we work better under pressure. That a time crunch does motivate us to get started, but the quality can suffer, right? If we are waiting and we're hurrying to get something done in a hurry, like close to a deadline, then we don't really spend quality time considering it. People think that multitasking is also helps, you can get more done, but it's also your productivity suffers. So we may have that urgency that motivates us to get going, but we don't necessarily work better. Okay. There are excuses why we don't get started. We prefer to do other things. We think we have plenty of time. We say, oh, well, I'll get to it later. I'm going to do the laundry today, but I'm going to do it later on instead of getting it done. So it's a good thing to just not put it off. Well, I can get to it tomorrow. It's a good thing not to put it off. But we get into a cycle, right? We get overwhelmed about a task, and then because of the lack of time, we are more overwhelmed, and we have increased stress, and we feel stuck and unable to move forward. So there's an impasse there. Another thing is we look for immediate gratification in place of a future reward. I would rather sit down and eat a bag of chips than start to write that letter or that email to somebody that God has put on my heart, or give them a call. So when we're in that, and this is a thing, it's a spiritual concept, right? Are we eternally minded, or are we present minded? And as Christians, we are living presently on this earth, but we are sowing seed and anticipating an eternal reward. So then we can see that also sometimes with people, as far as their salvation, right? They're more interested in having a good time or pleasing the flesh than committing their lives to God and serving Him and putting that first, the spiritual above our flesh. So our pleasant self is the one that's responsible for actually sitting down and getting things done. It wants to watch TV or play or take a nap or do things that feel good in the moment. So in fulfilling that instant gratification, our future self wants to reach a goal, like getting a degree. Our future self, the one that we're going to come to be in the future, sets goals and dreams and realizes the importance of hard work, consistency, and getting the job done. Oh, but only our present self, who we are at the moment, is the one that gets the job done because we initiate the start, right? So we need to align the two gratification perspectives, and that we can kind of relate that to the parallel of walking in the Spirit versus walking in the flesh to help harness the initiative, right? Our primary motivation is naturally the desire to experience pleasure and avoid pain, physically, mentally, or emotionally. And in comparison to the actual task we're procrastinating on, an alternative task may seem to be more pleasurable or less painful. So we're going to talk about that, is one of the causes is, whoops, that's up there, seeking pleasure or avoiding pain, okay? Often a potential discomfort outweighs the discomfort of performing a task and becomes the motivator. For example, you put off getting your taxes done, but you know you have to get it by such and such a date, or if you owe taxes, you have a penalty added on top of your taxes owed, right? So, but pleasure-seeking behavior is not the only reason that we choose to put off tasks. So I'm talking to us as people today to help us, but also to understand when you're dealing with somebody, why is it that they don't get started on some of these things to help make their situation better? Okay, one of the things is not confronting fear. They may have a fear of being judged poorly, rejected, or fear of failing, and that inhibits us or them from facing our fears. Okay, we may fear that you don't have the ability to accomplish something, and we distract ourselves from facing it or working towards a solution. So fear creates excuses that stop us and move us toward our comfort zone. I hate that phrase, getting out of my comfort zone. You know, we use it like it's an honor, that it's not in my comfort zone to give a testimony, or it's not in my comfort zone to call somebody that had an operation, or just different things. But it's a natural thing, right? What we're feeling comfortable about is what we're settled into, right? It's kind of feels like a comfortable pair of shoes. And it's a space where we're very familiar and where we feel in control. And I think that's a big problem especially in American society, because we are very independent. We want to be in control. But when we're in control, especially in ministry, God is not in control. We need to be submissive to God and yielding to God. And also, when you're talking about fear, fear is the opposite of faith, right? So when we're operating in fear, who are we making the Lord? It's not God, because he's bigger than all these things. So we need to make God the big mountain in front of us instead of the little molehill of a problem or fear. And fear exaggerates the risk and consequences of failure. So we avoid the discomfort, but we're not alone. So we don't need to condemn ourselves about it, because I can imagine that each one of us this week has put something off that we should have gotten started on, right? So we don't confront our fears. We don't want to face them, so it stops us from embarking on a task or initiating something. Our physical or our emotional state, when we're ill, when we're moved or sad or even overly happy, it can impede us. We allow hunger or sleepiness or an overwhelming feeling to prevent us from getting started. And we're stressed by not having planned what you need to do. So we wait until we're in the mood. But are we ever in the mood? Right? We also, because of an emotional state, we kind of avoid a boring or tedious or difficult task. Any comments or thoughts at this point? Okay. Just put your hand up or jump in if you've got something that you feel like you want to say. Okay, a lack of motivation. We can have internal motivation and external motivation. Things on the outside of us, like a punishment or a reward, right? We don't speed when we see a police car there, right? Or you might be motivated to purchase something at a particular store or participate in some type of a program because you might get reward points and earn a prize, right? So our intrinsic motivation is defined as the motivation to engage in a behavior because of the inherent satisfaction of an activity rather than the desire for a reward or specific outcome. For example, an enjoyment of an activity, or because that activity is in line with our values, like we might participate in a pro-life march, right? Or we could like to sit out on the lawn and have a cup of coffee and watch the stars, okay? So this is a harder motivation on the inside. It's not as strong usually as extrinsic motivation, which is outside. It's a catalyst for action that is driven by external rewards. It could be material gain or a promotion, okay? We're not very motivated to get to work every day and get there on time. But by doing so, you can get recognition or a raise, or you show your employer that you are a reliable employee and he can give you advancement or recognition or a promotion, right? The problem is we don't see a benefit in performing a task, or the benefit that we get is too far in the future. And that's the same thing about, we can look at spending eternity with God, right? And the eternal rewards that we get when we sow into his kingdom. Okay. So we don't want to confront our fears. We might not feel physically, emotionally, or mentally in the right state to start on a task. We lack motivation, and sometimes because we're unclear, we lack clarity what we need to work on to get it done, how to do it, why you should complete the task, what are the priorities. And our brain tells us that it's too hard, too uncomfortable, or too tiring. And naturally, it tries to conserve energy and avoid feeling uncomfortable, right? How many times do you think, well, I'm just tired, I'm going to go to bed and start over tomorrow, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Gone with the Wind, but in Gone with the Wind, Scarlett is there trying to rebuild her family's plantation after the Civil War, and there was something going on and whatever, and she just says, I'll think about it tomorrow. Okay? So because it's uncomfortable and our present self chooses an alternative when any of these things are unclear. We don't know what to work on, how to get to it, why we even should do that. A lot of times you hear people say, why should I study algebra? Or why should I study a language? What am I ever going to use it for? Right? And some of us study things because we enjoy it. But there is a benefit. But if it's unclear to us, we are not motivated to do it. Another cause of procrastination is a lack of momentum. If we've been ill or laid off, sometimes it's hard for us to start again. And I think that's a big problem with Mondays, right? When people work Monday through Friday and they have the weekend off, they've been just hanging out, doing fun things. And it's like, people say that joke, they don't like Mondays. They don't want to get started and go back to it. So it's harder to keep in motion, to get in motion, than to keep moving or increase the pace, right? It's easier to get up on Tuesday and continue than to start after you've had or come back from a vacation, right? After Monday or a vacation. So it's harder to get into motion than to keep moving or increase the pace. And it requires more willpower and mental strength. So we talked about even disciplined people have problems with motivation. Okay, the longer we wait, the stronger the resistance is. For example, if we want to go on a diet or start exercising. So now is the time of salvation. Now is the day of salvation. Now is a good time to get started on something. So we say we want to get something done. Oh, there's a saying. If you want to get something done, ask a busy person to get it done, right? Because they're already moving, they're already incorporated, they're already active. So moving helps them to get helps us to get going. Except the exception is the overdoer type, which we'll talk about an overdoer type in a little bit later on as types of procrastinators. So there's two different kinds of procrastinating. Active procrastinating, which is the habit of purposefully postponing decisions or actions and using pressure as a motivator. It's a strategy and a conscious choice. And the mistaken belief can be that we do better under pressure, so we create it by procrastinating. So that's active procrastinating. It's an active choice. Then there's passive procrastinating. And that is putting off decisions or actions due to the inability to do things efficiently. It's an inability to make quick, efficient decisions, and we often feel too anxious or overwhelmed to get started. So I'm going to, any comments or questions at this point? Okay.
Well, shoot.
Go ahead.
Do it. Can you give me the definition of the active procrastination again?
Yes. Active procrastination is the habit of purposefully postponing decisions or actions and using pressure as a motivator.
Okay.
And passive is postponing, putting off decisions or actions because of an inability to do things efficiently, right? Okay.
Thank you.
So I've got 12 questions, which I can copy these and send them to you or send you in the PowerPoint that you can use if somebody wants to know, to target why do we procrastinate? What do we do that procrastinates? This is a generalization, of course, as all of these categorizing techniques are. But if you want to mark down the number of the questions that you write yes to, so that will help identify what is the reason that you personally procrastinate. Okay, so the first question is, do you put off doing, and again, when I was looking at these, I thought they were a little bit generic, kind of not quite accurate, but I don't know why they came up with these patterns and hooked them together. So do you put off doing a project until you can find the best time to do it, or until the best time presents itself? Yes or no? Do you feel upset or humiliated if you don't get as good a grade? Now, some of this is apply it to your situations, right? This would be, zeroing in an academic or different settings. So if you don't get as much recognition or accolades as one of your peers, so just adjust it to your situation. For example, if you're in a Bible study group and everybody's saying, oh, how insightful their comment was, and they don't, and they're like, nah, yours is not accurate, for example. Okay, so do you feel upset or humiliated if you don't get as good a grade as one of your peers? Number 3, do you plan study time with friends that turn into chat sessions about things like best sushi restaurant in town? So, or do you have a planning session for an outreach, or whatever kind of session that you have with a targeted motive, right? And then you end up just chit-chatting about stuff instead of focusing in on the reason for your gathering, the reason for what you're getting together. Do you take a break from working to watch one TV show, but end up watching 3 or more? Okay, so that could be, well, I'm just going to check one message. I'm just going to look at one post, all right? But you end up, the next thing you know, you've been doing it for an hour. So do you have trouble or working on a project because you doubt your judgment or ability? We talked about that. I'll have to remember to erase that screen. Sorry, I'm just making a note so I don't forget. Okay. 6, do you often spend more time worrying about an assignment than doing it? 7, do you habitually wait until the last minute before you start studying or preparing for a task? 8, do you avoid doing projects that are boring, even if you know that your avoidance will have major consequences? 9, do you often believe you're doing a better job and should get a better grade or better pointage or recognition than your teacher's boss or boss thinks? Do you become sulky, irritable, or argumentative when asked to do something that you don't want to do? Do you find yourself doing other things like organizing your record collection or helping out a friend when you should be studying or finishing a project? And 12, do you often find yourself complaining, I have so much to do, I have no time, or I'm too busy to do what you need to do? Does anybody want me to repeat any of those questions? Okay. So if you answered yes to questions 1 and 2, or the people that you're trying to help target their reasons for procrastinating, you're a perfectionist, what you call a perfectionist procrastinator. If you said yes to 3 and 4, they're classified as a dreamer procrastinator. 5 and 6 is a worrier procrastinator. 7 and 8 is a defier procrastinator. 9 and 10 they call a crisis maker procrastinator. And 11 and 12 are grouped together as overdoer procrastinators. And a person can have a mix of types that affect them, right? If one question out of the group is answered yes, but not the other, it may mean that that category applies to you or the people you're dealing with. And we're going to talk about characteristics of these different types of procrastinators and strategies for how we can target and help overcome the reasons why we procrastinate. So the perfectionist type puts off tasks out of fears of not being able to complete them perfectly. So a lot of times we think that we have to, it's only good enough if it's perfect, and we know it's never good enough, right? So that's often can happen when we're dealing with children and we criticize how they make the bed or criticize how they take out the trash, right? Depending on their abilities is depending how we're going to do it. So this is how we deal also with baby Christians or immature Christians, people that are longtime Christians but are not walking according to their abilities. Okay. So they might think that it's not going to be good enough, so we're not going to do it. So some of the characteristics of a perfectionist procrastinators, you put forth large efforts, amounts of time and energy to make sure you do a task perfectly. You may put off starting tasks due to fear or doubts about doing them the right way. And that, you know, sometimes when you're dealing with critical people, you don't want to do it because it's never good enough, right? So that happens if we have a boss or friends or parents, okay? So we could put off starting tasks due to fear or doubts about doing them the right way. You might see life as things that have to be done, not what you want to do or get to do. So I think that's, we'll see later on that can be a change of attitude can help us in targeting a task, right? If you say, I have to dust versus I want to dust. I don't know, some people do want to dust, but I look at it as it's a privilege for me to be a good steward and keep clean the things that God has given me. Okay? So obviously, dusting is not one of my favorite tasks, right? Strategies. How, if you're a perfectionist person, how can you overcome some of these inhibitions and these different characteristics and such situations? All right. We make a point of striving for excellence rather than perfection. It says to do all things as unto the Lord, right? Does God expect us to do things perfectly? He expects us to be obedient according to the abilities that we have, right? And we have the example of the servants with the talents, right? 5. Well, I'm trying to think, the 2 different counts are different. 5, 2 and 1, and 5, 4 and 1, I think it is. You know, and they received rewards according to their ability, but God still said, enter into the joy of the Lord, my good and faithful servant, right? Because you were faithful with what you have. All right. Do our very best in the situation. Okay, we can focus on the realistic versus the ideal and avoid an all or nothing attitude about something. If it can't be perfect, then I'm not doing it at all. And then give your time a task limit so that you're only working on it a certain amount of time. You're not just keeping going until you get what you think are the desired results. And to make short, practical to-do lists. Okay, so it's not, I'm going to do all of these things, but I'm going to do these 3 things that I'm able to tackle in the one day or in this certain time period. And sometimes one thing that we're working on, if you're talking about the momentous job of cleaning out the basement or the garage, it's not going to get done in one Saturday, right? So I'm going to work on this for an hour, or I am going to throw out all of this type of thing, or sort through 5 bags or boxes. And then we talk about a dreamer. A dreamer delays tasks due to a struggle with focus and attention to detail or the present reality. Okay, they're looking at what the cloud of what may be. The characteristics, they recoil from difficult or distressing things. So they want it to be pleasant, like a fairy tale, and we have myths in Christianity too, right? That this is going to be all a bed of roses, or if God is calling us into something, we're not going to have any opposition or struggle. And we sometimes think, oh, if this door's open, it's God, and that's not necessarily the case, right? A dreamer tends to be passive rather than active. So they're thinking rather than doing. May pay little attention to facts or details, which make it hard to focus and perform tasks. If you don't know the things that need to be done, then you can't do them, right? If you don't have a plan that I need to have these articles, these supplies to get it done, then we can't get it done. If we don't have something that's measurable, we talked in the past, I think I have it down farther somewhere, about SMART goals, right? They talk about that in counseling. Oh gosh, and they're all the letters came out to me, but what I'm talking about is measurable. Measurable. If you don't know what it is, you don't know if you've gotten it done, right? It's exceptionally hard to work, and efficiency is exceptionally hard work and efficiency is unnecessary for them, since fate will intervene. So it's just going to, if what que sera, what will be, will be. If it's going to happen, if God wants it, it's going to happen. And so I don't have to go apply for a job. But he does often just drop things into our lap, right? But if we got moving, it's less likely to happen. So there are different exercises or steps that we can do or recommend to people to overcome these characteristics or these tendencies to avoid getting things done. We can train to differentiate between dreams and a goal. You develop the habit of details: who, what, when, where, how, and why, right? A dream is someday I'm going to get a degree. A goal is I'm going to get my records together, and I'm going to call this institution tomorrow and find out what it takes to apply to their program, right? So we have to, instead of thinking in abstracts, help them to think about the details. Okay, so a dreamer, to help them change to I wish I could do it, I wish I could, to I will do it. Okay, and we talked about at the very beginning, some of this is an attitude change, right? I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it at 2 o'clock. So we changed, just like I was saying, someday to an appointed time. So those 2 points actually can go together, right? I wish I could to I will. I want to clean out the garage. I will clean out the garage. Let me find my notes where I am. Okay. So we can also, when we write it down, we also have more specifics, right? So it helps with the clarity. And we can use a timeline, being very specific about what we're going to do. We're going to do this work on this for 5 minutes. We're going to do this in 2 minutes. And what did you, okay, I was looking for a comment. Eddie, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yes. Just remind me of I have a grandson that all he has to do is finish up the 12th grade. He got into a little trouble and now he can go online. So you talk to him and he just, okay, it's like he signed up for the class, but trying to get him to that class is like it's been a task. He comes up with all these different excuses, and when you hear them, they sound like, okay, practical, but I said to myself, I said, you know what, I have to start calling them out on those things, because they're not producing what he needs to do. He needs to go to class, and he needs to finish so he can get his degree. So I don't know, maybe someone has some kind of suggestion where I can, talk to him, or
Well, at the
help him.
end, we do talk about it in some of the solutions is, creating a reward or a penalty system. Sometimes just having somebody that we're accountable to, well, did you do it? Sometimes they get into the attitude that it's a nagging thing, but if we've determined that we're going to be accountable to somebody, having to answer to them helps, right? But it would be helpful to find out what is it that motivates him to get something done. What is it that's painful or would be a reward, or what would help him to get out of that future, I'm going to do it sometime, and get into it now. So part of it is identifying what touches his heart and will, prompt him to go. the warrior type is characterized by fear of change or leaving the comfort of the familiar. They tend to be indecisive and fail to commit to specific decisions. They tend to be to lack confidence in themselves. So they're, like I said, second guessing. Some of these kind of cross and intertwine, right? And that causes them to avoid or delay doing things, right? They may be dependent on others for nice advice, nurturing, help, or approval. And they have a high could have a high resistance to change. So how do we combat a warrior tendency? We have to recognize that making no decision is making a decision. If I don't decide to step onto the train, I've decided not to take the train. It's going to leave without me. Okay. So we can follow a two-step decision making process. We commit to the goal and then determine the needed steps to achieve it. So the two steps are, I'm going to do the goal, and I will do these steps to achieve it. We change I can't statements. We say I can't swim across the English Channel, but I can swim a lap. Okay. We do one thing daily that has been consciously put off. So I've when I was starting to look into this, I've noticed, some things I kind of do naturally, and some things I started to intertwine to help me get some of the things done that kind of keep getting added onto the bottom of my to-do list and never crossed off. So I'm going to do this. I've been putting off cleaning the windows. I've been putting off working on a resume. I've been putting off studying my math. Or do one thing every week that it's uncomfortable for you to do. Go ahead, Cindy. Or
can you repeat the two-step decision-making process? The two-step. I didn't get the second one.
Okay, it's commit to the goal and determine the steps that you need to take to achieve it.
Thank you.
Determine the needed steps to achieve it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oops. Take that off.
Okay.
Is it off? I'll take it off.
So some things are uncomfortable, but we, can manage to do something that we've been putting off or uncomfortable to do. If we put a time limit on it too, right? So we break down large and intimidating tasks and we make them smaller and easier to manage. We talked about cleaning out the garage, right? There's thousands of boxes, but I'm going to sort through this section and I'm going to put these different boxes or bags into different piles and take the discard pile to the Salvation Army. Okay, you still have the whole rest of the garage, but you've worked on this section or for this amount of time, and the stuff that you've sorted, you've packaged up and you're getting rid of some of it. Okay. Then we have you guys recognized any of yourselves in some of this stuff? Some of it crosses lines too. A defier type does not believe someone else should dictate their schedule. Okay. Who are you to tell me what I have to do, right? And that could be dangerous if we're not in submission to God, right? We're telling him, and we find a lot of people in the world like this. Who are you to tell me that I have to do this or that? I'm not going to do it. And it doesn't inhibit us from serving God sometimes. Defiers can look at life as what others expect or require of them. Right? If you're thinking, oh, this person is demanding this of me or making me do this or pushing something else off on me. And when they look at it as opposed to what they want or would like to do, right? So if you're going to babysit, I have to babysit, or I want to help this person out. I have to go help this person get groceries. I want to help them out. We convey our negative feelings by procrastinating instead of verbalizing them. So this can be considered that passive aggressive resistance. Or some people use procrastination to challenge authority. Some people, especially today, do not respect authorities, right? Teachers, parents. So instead of directly challenging, we just put off obeying. We put off picking up our toys. We put off taking out the trash. We put off washing the car or going to the store. And I don't know how this fits in, and I don't know if it's true. According to the research that I was doing, they say defiers tend to pessimism, which I guess if you're talking about looking at it negatively versus optimistically, positively, the challenges of doing tasks. So what different steps can we implement to overcome that? Instead of looking at others' expectations as demands, look at it as a request. Are you raising your hand, Linda? No? Okay. And I look at this when I'm dealing with my granddaughters, right? I want juice. Well, how do you ask? If you want juice, use your words. How do you ask? Right? So look at it as someone is requesting you to help them versus ordering you. And that the changing our attitudes is a big step in all the different problems we face, right? Own up to our inaction. Okay, it's me that's deciding not to do it. We strive to act rather than react and do what we know needs to be done. Okay. You may be planning to mow the lawn, but because somebody says, will you go aren't you going to mow the lawn? You're like, I'm not going to do it, right? But it needs to be done, so you need to do it. Okay. So we try to work with each other as part of a team and not against it. And you see that in organizations or work situations, right? The person that just bucks the system, they don't want to work together. Well, we can try to be agreeable and work together. You're not working against your coworkers or your family members or your team members, or you're never going to get something done. And we find that in the body of Christ too. We work against different kinds of churches or denominations instead of trying to work together. So, and also do something specific that you enjoy, that satisfies you, that makes you feel gratification because it's done your way. All right, you can do it your way. You don't have to write the letter the way I'm telling you you have to write the letter or should write the letter when you're asking for forgiveness or reconciliation. You do it in the way that you want, or reach out to the person that you've hurt or wronged or that has wronged you, right? Do it your way. It's personalize it. A crisis maker puts off tasks so they can work under pressure. And we talked about this as active procrastination, right? We choose to do it because we think it makes it work better. It makes us get it done better. So their characteristics, you just ignore the task. You know, I don't see it. I'm tripping over it, but I don't see it. So I'm not going to even acknowledge it. So first they ignore it, then they make themselves the center of attention by how much it's taking them to get it done. They may be easily bored. Sometimes we need to prove ourselves by living on the edge, by waiting to the last minute, by being the superhero coming in like the cavalry, right? And finishing it up and getting it done. So I think we see a lot of this activity from this overproductive God idol that we've made in society and the body of Christ, where we think that the more we do, the more pleasing we are to God, or the better Christians we are, or we pat ourselves back for being more productive. But activity doesn't mean quality. Strategies. Identify other self-motivators besides stress. And we can do something from the inside or outside, and we'll talk about, again, different motivation techniques that we can apply to everybody. But it's not just, I got to get it done, because if I don't, it's due tomorrow at 8 o'clock and I'll get written up. Avoid using overly dramatic language. This draws attention to ourselves, because I've got all this work to do. I can't possibly get it all done. Look at me. I've achieved this. And I've got 100 things to do, and I got 99 done. Figure out methods for handling the task in order to avoid it, or to better manage reoccurring crises. So how can we order things to keep the tasks that we do from becoming a stress-filled, urgent situation, right? And we can go back to filing our taxes, right? If we get our records in order and we have things together, we're not so hassled about trying to get it in by midnight on the due date, right? So we can work out ways to manage it. Go ahead, Madeline. You wanted to say something, Madeline?
I'm sorry, I had to unmute.
Right.
Yeah, I can see myself in a lot of those ways. It's like when you were saying about talking things out, though. I'm the type of person that if I have something to do that I really don't want to do, then I'll talk it out. I'll let other people know, oh, I have to do such and such and such and such. And that gives me, that's an incentive for me to make sure that I do it. Because otherwise it probably won't get done. But if I tell my sister, oh, man, I got to clean up the house tomorrow, you know, or whatever, then I'm going to clean up the house tomorrow because I told my sister, Doreen, oh, I've got to clean up the house tomorrow. So I'll get it done then. But
Right.
if it's just in my mind, then maybe no, I would probably go ahead but when I speak it out, then it's more of an incentive for me to do and not necessarily just letting people know that, oh, I got all this to do. Oh, I got to. No, it's an incentive for me to do it. That's how I eliminate the procrastination part of it.
Right. That's your incentive, the accountability. And that's one of the nice things that, we can help each other with, right? The fact that we said, well, did you get this done? Well, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do it someday. Well, what was the first step that you just needed to do to get it done? And that is, the initiative. Your incentive is, I said I'm going to do it, and I'm going to live up to my word. And as Christians, I think that's admirable, right? We're going to do it because we're people of our word. So yeah, that is one of the things we talk about, and recognizing how do we get things done. I've seen just different things that I do through the day that I've been doing on and off, for trying to not put things off over the last year in some of these things, and some of these things that also are hindrances to me that, that I need to manage better. Okay, so what are different ways we can order our lives, our situations, to keep this from happening again, and always being last minute?
Yeah, well, if I can interject again,
Sure.
another thing that you had stated earlier was like, dividing things up into time. That really helps a lot, because when you talked about, cleaning the windows, I said, oh, is she reading my mind? Because it was like, oh, I knew from before spring, oh man, I gotta clean the windows. Oh man, I gotta clean the windows. And so, summer was winding down, and I said, okay, you've got to clean the windows. But I said, hey, I know I'm not going through this house and tiring myself out doing the whole house like I used to do. So I'm going to do all the downstairs first. Next week, I'll do all the upstairs. And that's exactly what I did, because I gave myself, okay, that set time agenda as to, when it was the day it was going to get done, and making sure that I, attended to the task like that. But that's what I had to do. I had to divide it up.
Doreen shared in the chat that when she was in school, she used to wait to the last minute, and she would do better on a paper if she waited to the last minute than doing it little at a time. It's probably because you devote concentration to it instead of stretching it out, and you don't reread it. And it does happen that we do things better, but it creates a lot of stress.
But that stress, because I was like that too. In college, I was like that, and it was like, you can call it procrastination, but I knew that unless I pulled an all-nighter, the paper wasn't going to be as good as if I had worked on it little by little. And so, and that's what we called them. Oh, you pulling an all-nighter, huh? Yeah, pulling another all-nighter, and you would jam on the paper, get the better mark, because it's like you said, your focus, oh, hey, you've got to get it done. You've got to get everything, get in the library, and back in the day, I didn't have any getting online and being able to get the information. So, staying in the library until they close and going back to the dorm and, getting the work done.
Right. But I think one of the things is when we stretch it out, we get distracted and bored. So
maybe that's it.
You don't focus. And so one of the things, instead of doing it for 3 hours, do a short time, and you review what you did but there's a lot of distractions. I think that's a big thing, eliminating distractions. Yeah, create your own motivators that change a boring task to something that's more interesting. So that's like, if you're stretching it out, what is it that can make it something that I am more invested in? If I'm doing something for my family, you know, instead of looking at it as I have all this cooking to do, or I have all this, you know, I'm just doing it as a have to versus I'm going to do it to uh, do it because it's going to be something that means something to people that means something to me, right? Okay, so we're trying to make it so that there's something interesting about that's your self motivator. Okay. You realize you may become more interesting once you get involved in it. Agree to just try it for 5 minutes. And then usually once we start doing something well, I'm going to do it for 5 or 10 minutes, we can get a little bit farther along on the task. So the overdoer takes on too much and can't find time to start and complete tasks. So that could be involved in mixed with some of these other things too. It gives me stress so that I can't fit in everything and I have to do it all at the last minute. I don't know, you know, some of this information I get is from psychology kind of typifications and studies and whatever. So, you know, not take it for what it's worth, not necessarily that it's always true in every case, but we need to examine it. It says sometimes overdoers can suffer from low esteem, which may compel them to be people pleasers. So they might have trouble to say no or ask somebody for help. Okay, they can get distracted from specifics or confused about their priorities. Sorry, I got a message from Bridget and from Kelvin and Mary got logged out. Bridget has had a ton of funerals this year. You can really pray for her. It's been kind of affecting her. Okay, so we can get distracted because we have so much stuff, and then you get confused about what is the real important thing, the order of what's most important, and so you end up doing a lot of little things that are on the list, but not the one that in the order of importance or the one that has to be done before the other. Sometimes we have to, there's something that's important, but there's something that's less important that needs to be completed before we can focus on that because there's a time deadline. Let's see. And a lot of times we do lack self-discipline. Okay, and I think that's I mean, I know I had to learn about working. I didn't just automatically learn how to do good work and be a good employee, right? And I know I'm studying through this. I did see that in the development of teenagers and whatever, there is just like our brain doesn't fully develop until we're 25. There's a thing about the development as far as organizing and your discipline and your ability to focus and be a good worker, for example. So you know, you think, oh, we're going to talk a teeny bit in a little bit about laziness, but you think, oh, they're lazy, but they're not necessarily. There's a difference between procrastinating and laziness, and it. So we could lack true self-discipline. So that is an area we can work on. How can we be more organized in targeting and doing what we have on our list, doing what we need to do. Okay, so when we try to assume too many responsibilities, then we get distracted. And we may be, when we're talking about personal discipline, we may lack discipline about our personal needs. We may not pay attention to what we need, or we may have a mismatched priority about what is it that we actually need, so that we're healthy, spirit, soul, and body. So often people today, I think, find themselves feeling guilty about relaxing. So they feel ashamed that they're not doing this or that or the same thing as other people. We need to relax. We need to have some downtime. That's why God gave us sleep. Our bodies rebuild. We need to not always have our brains working. And I think some of the people you misread, you think TV is relaxing, but it does stimulate different things in your eyes and brain. So you're zoning out and you're not actually doing something, but it's kind of entertaining you or keeping you occupied. But can you sit on the porch and rock and look at the sunset? We think we glorify the supermom or the person that's going and doing all this stuff at church. We need to rest, and we need to rest in the Lord. And it can fall into that inertia, right? So then it makes it difficult for you to get up and do things. But so there's a balance, but we need to be able to just sit and contemplate and meditate. So we need to acknowledge the difference between priorities or demands. There's a lot of people that in the business world, there's a thing about picking up monkeys, which refers to taking on tasks that belong to other people. So because somebody or something is demanding something of us does not mean that's what we needed to be handling at the moment. Okay. So is it important? Is it urgent? Is it just to please someone? Are they being reasonable in what they're asking and the timing? Let's not depend on others for approval. We do it so that we get the accolades or approval of other people. Let's look at how we are in control of the things that are happening that we need to do, not on all these things moving us around like a pawn piece. Because when we have all these uncompleted tasks and things that we need to do, we are being pulled in all these directions. But we can say no to certain things. We can put it off. We can put it lower on the list and put it in a certain time frame. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock. This is what I need to do now. And when we make a schedule, when we order it, we are in control. These things aren't running our lives, so we don't feel so harried. So we can talk about, and this is one of the things Madeline was talking about, right? What we say. We talk less about obligations. I have to do this. I have to do that. But more about our options. I can do this at this time. I'm able to do this at this time. I'm putting this I can just throw out. It's not something that needs to be on my list. I want to do it, I can do it, I get to do it, as opposed to I have to do it. So we can learn to say no as well to other people when it's appropriate and enlist help. So make and follow daily to-do lists that make the best use of your time and energy. When we were younger, my husband and we lived in Guatemala, we lived in a house and we had a gardener, and he would cut our grass with a machete. And I would make a list of things for him to do that needed to be done. But at a certain time during the rainy season, there was a period of rain, and it started at such and such a time, and it might be 3 hours, but it was always at this particular time. But he could not figure out the things that could be done underneath the overhang in shelter, and do the other things that were out in the open that weren't going to be that you could do just out under the open air, right? So you need to figure out, I needed to tell him, do this first and then do this later, because if you waited and did the thing that you might want to do that could be done under the overhang, under the awning or whatever, when it was raining, and then you were like, there's nothing, you couldn't do it because it was out and it was pouring down rain. So we can order things to make the best use of the time and energy. So, like saving energy and time, put everything into the refrigerator at one time versus going when you're cleaning up after the dinner. Put one thing open the door, go put another thing, open the door. But if you have everything you're putting away into the refrigerator and you just go and open the door and you're just loading it up, it's more organized and it's an efficient use of time and energy. And be sure to include leisure activities in our lives, right? Because God doesn't want life to be a complete burden. We need to have things that we take pleasure in and enjoy. So is there any thoughts up to this point, or comments? So this section is kind of interchangeable. It starts with reducing procrastination and moves into increasing the motivation. There are specifics that motivate each of us, and we have to figure out what things those are. If it motivates me to do things that bless my children and grandchildren, then using that as a motivator to help me get some things done, right? If it's avoidance of pain, to help me do this so that I don't suffer this consequence. We need to figure out personally and help people figure out what it is that helps motivate them to get moving. All right. We have to change doubt into do. Doubt is a big thing that stops us from doing things. So we talked about earlier, when something is not clear and we just feel like we're treading water. What do I do to get started? What is it? Identify what I need to do, and it removes that lack of confidence and doubt, right? We don't know what needs to be done. We don't know what the expectations are. But when we have increased certainty and confidence and clarity, then we can move into action. So unrealistic and unclear expectations are often a reason we feel overwhelmed, and that creates anxiety, which perpetuates the avoidance cycle, right? So when we're breaking it down into small identifiable tasks and adjust our expectations, we can have a certainty, and we can also see that we're getting something done. And this is where I wrote down that about SMART goals. It's specific goal, measurable, so we can say how we would know what it is we need to do to attain it. Achievable, it's something that's reasonable for us to do. I am not going to be able to high jump anything, let alone 10 feet, right? I can't do it. So I can't make that as part of my goal because I can't do it. What are we able to do reasonably, or in the time frame? I remember in a different class and reading different things. Okay, boss, you want me to add this to my schedule, but I can't fit this in the number of hours that I have. So you told me to do this, and I need to do this, which I can only do part of it. What do you want me to focus on? Because I can't do it all, right? Not in the amount of time that I'm given. So then they help to identify what it is that they want you to do and how to make the changes and adjust. It has to be relevant. Okay, if it doesn't mean anything, then we aren't motivated. And a time bound, we have a certain amount of time to do it, and making it something that we no longer want. It makes it something we no longer want to avoid. So it's something that needs to be done in this amount of time or by this date. That's why the due date is so hanging over us, but that helps us not want to. The SMART goals help us not want to avoid the task because when it meets all these different criteria: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Okay, so we want to remove the doubt, increase certainty and confidence. Creating a reward system so we can focus on a reward after completion. That can just be the feeling of relief, or it could be a more proactive, concrete or just feeling more proactive and identifiable. I know that sometimes I like to just get, when you have a little container of food or something in the shelf or the closet or the refrigerator, and I get that last little spoonful out or that last whatever out of it and empty it out and I throw it out, it feels satisfying to me. It's completing something. I can see that I've finished something. Well, it's kind of a silly thing, but it's something I've noticed that feeling. So we can focus the reward on completion. We can make it a small 1 hour work, and then we put 15 minutes of a desired activity. We can reward ourselves. I'm going to erase that so you don't look at that. So that's kind of your reward system. I'm just mentioning some things that after I've worked on this for an hour, I can put my feet up and listen to this music for 15 minutes. I can get a special coffee. And when we're finishing at the last minute, the only reward is a feeling of relief versus a feeling of satisfaction of getting it done right away. And I know I do feel better when I've gotten it done and I don't have to face it anymore. We can have a feeling of pride in accomplishing what we're doing. So these are internal, right? We can feel motivated, energized by the accomplishment alone. And so this is kind of what Madeline was talking about, speaking it out, right? The penalty of kindly punishing ourselves when everybody knows we didn't complete the task, right? We know that they're going to say, well, you said you were going to do it. And that's just a little poke, right? And sometimes it can be a big poke. We could get, a lot of times they might have a charge when you don't show up for a class, like if you're taking a tennis class or something, or if you don't show up for your class and your tennis partner doesn't have anybody to play with and they have to forfeit or not play. You can say, if I don't do this, I'll give a small donation to charity. Or you've seen the penalty jars, right? When they used to have that for swearing or whatever, but other different things. When you do this, you can drop a little something in the penalty jar. A friend with a common goal or need. So in creating accountability, we need to reach a point where not taking the action is more painful than taking the action. This could be in finances, health, business, personal and business growth, our self-image. What is it going to cost you to generate that motivation to start away? So it's a cost. There's a cost. Visualization. Focus on the satisfaction and gratification of completion. Now, some of these, when you're more disciplined, or if the reward of completing it and feeling it on the inside is bigger than visualizing how you're going to feel when it's all done. I'm really going to be happy with how my house turned out when I get done painting this room. Okay. So we're feeling on the good feeling of it, not the discomfort of starting. So imagine the feeling or the anticipations once it's completed, and that will help shift our mentality. And you can picture like your feeling, your mental attitude, even your physical body, right? Right. So eliminating distractions. I think that's something that is really important, because every time we get a notification, then you're stopping and listening and checking out what it was, or even just that little ping is stopping you from doing what you're doing. If you're having lunch with somebody and every time you get a message or a ping or a Facebook something or an email or whatever, and it's ding, 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 you are not giving that person the attention they deserve. So I know, that I have a computer and I have a tablet. So I don't do any of that stuff on my phone. I don't look up YouTube videos. I don't do the internet. My phone is for answering calls and sending messages and pictures and things, right? So, I mean, I can, if you send me a link, I can access it, but I would do all that stuff on a certain device. This is just for my communication, and I use my computer for doing all the typing and posting and emails. I don't even get emails on my phone. And with all the garbage that they send you, you're getting all this blips on all the time, and it's distracting. So remove the sources of pleasure or distraction from our environment, right? If you get all caught up in listening to some song that comes on your playlist or the radio, instead of doing what you intended to do, then turn it off. If the notifications are keeping you, then turn them off. I'm on a thread with my mom and some of my brothers and sisters and her cousin, about different things. And my mom's cousin, she'll send it, like right now my mom's in Florida and there was a hurricane coming to where she was at, close to it. So there's different comments and stuff. So she'll send out something, and then you'll have boop, 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 people responding. And then her cousin, it never fails. Everybody's already responded. And the next morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, she responds, right? So on that particular thread, I don't get any little ping that because I'm not going to look at something, or if somebody is planning a party or something and trying to do something and everybody's saying, yeah, that's okay with me. I don't give any sound or whatever to those notifications. And I just say, I'm going to look at it all at once and not think, that my daughter is saying, my car's broken down and can you come pick me up? Right. And someone's just saying, yeah, I can't do it that day. Or that sounds good to me. Or you get that little thumbs up or like, it's like, I don't need all those little blips to interrupt me. That's just me. But when we have all these distractions, we're no longer choosing between the desirable and the undesirable. There's these things that are controlling us and keeping us from doing what is important. So changing the environment. If you're having trouble, like a mom is having trouble studying for a class or whatever with her kids around, then some people get up and go to a coffee shop or the library, right? Or if you need to get something written, but then when you eliminate the distractions, you don't have those hard choices. It's not drawing at you. Be aware of the human tendency toward comfort or choosing to avoid pain. Helps us choose what to act on. And if you just are aware of yourself, how that's affecting you, you can notice how it helps you to act and react when you're procrastinating or studying with motivation. So there are some other things about creating clarity, confronting fear, creating momentum, considering consequences to associate with doers. Okay, and like Madeline mentioned, announcing your plans. So I had a couple of other items here, but I do want to say something about laziness because there is procrastination related to, let's go. Procrastination related to depression. That's a clinical depression or feeling down. There's procrastination that's related to grief or trauma that causes us not to act. And I do want to mention this about procrastination is used as a coping mechanism. And that is a bit different than laziness, which I mentioned at the beginning, because this is one of the questions that I wanted to cover in the session quiz that I talked about. Laziness is a behavioral attribute. Okay, so procrastination may incorporate laziness, but laziness and procrastination are not the same thing. Procrastination is a coping mechanism, and laziness is a behavioral attribute. And laziness are similar in that they both involve a lack of motivation, but unlike a lazy person, a procrastinator aspires and intends to complete the task, and moreover, does eventually complete it, even if it's at a higher cost to himself by procrastinating. That's from Psychology Today. We are being lazy if we can do something that we ought to do, but are reluctant to do it because of the effort involved. So I don't want to mow the lawn because it's too much work. Versus I've got all these other things that are inhibiting me to do it. We do it badly or do something else that is less strenuous or onerous, or simply remain idle. So we just decide I don't want to put the effort to wash the dishes, so I'm going to watch TV instead. That's laziness. Okay, there is strategic idleness, which is using our downtime to to regroup, refresh, restore. Okay? We use our idle moments to observe and enjoy life, find inspiration, maintain perspective, circumvent pettiness, reduce inefficiency and half living, and conserve our health and energy for truly important tasks. So being purposeful in our idleness is also not being lazy, and it also is being healthful. When you don't see the class live in order to give credit, now they're saying you have to have some kind of a quiz. So I have some questions based on this class, and I want your suggestions about some of the things that we covered in order to include it, that you think is important for somebody that's reading this, or that information that they would get out of the class at a future date when they're seeing it not live. So if you could message it to me, email it to me, or talk about it, consider it, I would appreciate it. Are there any comments or observations or concerns at this point? Also, if you have any suggestions for classes, I'm always working on different studies and checking out into other people to help with some input to help us be productive in our efforts for the Lord and helpful to the people in our environment. So if there's nothing else, then I'll just end for now.
This is wonderful, by the way. I love this. It's so much like it's a lot like what I'm doing in Celebrate Recovery, and it's very helpful.
Well, it does help people in that type of situation, right? To help motivate.
Yes.
That's what when we're working with people, helping to motivate them and overcoming those obstacles and excuses, right? And then putting tools into people's hands, but also ourselves. You know,
Amen.
and
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
make a better use of my time.